have absolutely no idea what you guys know about the opioid settlement funds. What I have found out from individually working with people across the state is that some people know a lot about it and some people know absolutely nothing. So I guessed at what we might want to cover today, but if you have questions, if there's something you guys want to talk about, I'd rather have a discussion than stand up here and talk at you. So by all means, let me know what you want to know and what you want to talk about and what questions you have. Okay, so do you guys feel like you know a little bit about the opioid settlement funds? Anybody know a lot about it? All over the place. Okay, a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to kind of start at the top. Please, if you have questions, ask them. This is extremely complicated. There's different buckets of money. They function differently. There's different waves of these settlements that are being literally signed right now. So there's a lot of unknowns. I don't know everything. The AG's office doesn't know everything. The abatement council doesn't know everything. We are figuring it out as we go along. And every time we talk to you guys, we figure out that there's things that we have not even considered yet. So if you have a question, please ask it. But we're going to start all the way at the top, and I know some of you already know some of these things. So there's 3 buckets of money that all of the settlements that come into the state are going to be divided into. 15% right off the top is going into the state general fund, so right back to the state. Another 15% is going to the subdivisions that signed on to the original settlement agreements. The other 70% is going into what we're calling the abatement fund, and that is overseen by the state's Opioid Abatement Council. And we're going to talk about all 3 of these. Okay, so the amount right now, there's about $613 million coming in over 18 years. Again, it's extremely complicated because the settlement agreements all are different lengths of time. So some are front-loaded, some are 10 years, some are 18 years. It makes it very difficult for planning, and we're going to talk about that. But out of the $613 million, $429 oh, that's you won't be able to see that. You can see right here the 429 is going into the abatement fund, that's the 70%, the other 92 million each are going into the state and subdivision fund. Okay, the state funds, again, the 15%, as of right now, 92 million. There are some settlements in the works, so that number is going to change several times. But right now, we're looking at about 92 million, goes directly into the state general fund. The state can do what they want with that. Okay? It does not have to be used for future remediation purposes. It can be used to reimburse themselves for prior costs that have been incurred. Again, it goes directly into the general fund. As of yet, I don't know that they have any plans for it. The subdivision funds. So, subdivision is a city or a county, so the counties are getting 2 different buckets of money, the subdivision bucket of money and then the abatement bucket of money. But there are some cities that are also getting some subdivision funds. This bucket of money works differently than the abatement bucket, okay? It can also be used to reimburse yourself for previous costs incurred related to the opioid crisis. Okay, we know that counties have had to pay a lot of money, law enforcement, healthcare, all sorts of things, EMS related to the opioid crisis. You can reimburse yourself for that and use those funds for whatever you want to use them for. Some counties or subdivisions are putting it directly into their general fund. Some are putting it into their capital project fund. You can do what you want with it. I want you to be careful how you talk about this bucket of money, and we're going to talk about that in a little while because some people are getting some negative attention about how they're spending this. They are not doing anything wrong, but some national and state organizations have different thoughts about it. So this bucket, you do not have to report back on where these funds have went. Okay, it will come into your account directly from Brown and Greer. That's the National Opioid Organizer. They will send it directly to the counties and the cities. You can put it wherever you want to put it. You do not have to report back on where it went. by the state AG's comptroller's office, okay? So you can use this money how you want. If you do use it for non-opioid purposes, like litigation fees, you would have to report that back to the Ground Bureau every 6 months, okay? If this is confusing, please ask questions. Basically, you can use this money for what you want to use it for without having to report it back to anybody. This is what has already been paid out into the subdivision fund. So a lot of these payments have been front-loaded for the first year. So last fall, there were 2 distributor payments that went out for a total of $6.5 million. The J&J Jansen subdivision payment, it went out years 1 through 5, all in the first year. And they will not pay out again until year 6. So whatever you got from the subdivision funds, year 1 is going to be a lot more money than you're going to get year 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so if you're planning on using these funds for anything specific, please keep that in mind. And this is what it will look like over time. Having said that, these are the distributor payments, and those are all going to be pretty consistently spread out for the 18 years. Those are pretty consistent. But again, if you're planning on what you're going to do with this money, this is maximum payout. Okay, if any of these distributor companies go bankrupt, that's going to mess with this payment schedule. If they're late on their payments, you're going to be late on getting your payment. If they decide to pay more up front, you're going to get more front-loaded, and then you're not going to get as much on the back end. This is the plan, only if everybody sticks to it. Okay? Makes it very difficult for you guys to plan on how to spend. And then again, the J&J, they were front-loaded for the first 5 years, and you will not get another payment for the J&J fund until 2026. And it will be much less than what you got in 2022. Okay, the other 70% is going to the abatement council. In 2021, state legislature did pass a bill to assemble a state opioid abatement fund and an opioid abatement council. They are in place. The council began meeting in July of 2022. They actually have an emergency meeting this afternoon. They meet quarterly. And basically what they're charged with is distributing that 70% of the total funds that come into the state. Again, out of those 70%, 35% will go directly to the counties. The other 65% will be held back and it will be given out in competitive grants. That process hasn't started yet, but they have sent out the first county payments. So $31 million went out. Those payments started going out at the end of February. Everybody should have gotten their first payment, should have signed a letter of agreement with the council, and that agreement included in it what's to be reported back to them, and also the approved uses on where the money can be spent, and we'll talk about that as well. So all of these funds that come from the abatement council have to be spent on future opioid remediation purposes, and we'll talk about that. And then this is to the 15 voting members. The one non-voting member is the commissioner of the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. You can see the other voting members are made up: governor, speaker of the House, speaker of the Senate, TCSA. You guys did have 2. You have 2 representatives. Who are they, David? It's Lisa Tipton from Johnson City, Judge Sexton, and Judge Sexton. And they are 4-year terms. And then every time those terms roll over, again, you guys will get to nominate 2 people to have on the council. So you are represented on the council, and David does attend the council meetings when he can, and I attend all of them as well. Okay, the county allocations. This is important because it's almost amazing how complicated this is, guys, and I hate it for you because for planning, it's nearly impossible. The allocations were determined, so how much of the bucket of money each county is getting. It's based on fatal, non-fatal overdoses, prescriptions written per person, and then the population of the county. They calculate all this up, 3 years, estimate 3 years averaged over time, and then they come up with a percentage, and that's the percentage of each bucket of money that you get. I'm going to tell you why it's complicated. This is something I want you guys to do, and we'll do this for you. If anybody wants us to track this for you, please let us know. These are the statistics that will be used to calculate your allocation every 4 years. That county allocation is going to change. Okay? So basically, if your statistics get better, if you have less fatal and non-fatal overdoses and prescriptions written, the amount of money you get is going to decrease. If you have more fatal and non-fatal overdoses and prescriptions written, the amount of money you get is going to increase. So as you're planning over an 18-year period, you have to remember that every 4 years, that percentage of money that you're going to get is going to change. And it's going to be based on this. If you want us to track this for you, we will absolutely do that so that when you know the fourth payment's coming up and it's going to change, we can kind of have an idea of what that payment's going to change to. Just let us know if you want us to do that for you. These are the payments that went out 2023, again, $31.5 million started in February. So these are the future payments that will be coming in. And you can see they're kind of all over the place. This is what's going into the 70% that has to be spent on future remediation purposes. It changes. Okay, your biannual reporting. Any funds that come directly from the Opioid Abatement Council, and those will come to you through Edison. I'm sure you're all very familiar with Edison. They'll come directly through Edison to you. You have to report back. So as we said with that subdivision bucket of money, there's no reporting. You don't have to tell the state where it went. You can do with it as you please. But this has to be reported back twice a year to the Abatement Council. And then they have to report all of that information back to the state. So it's what strategies you used, you spent the money on, the total amount spent on each strategy, when the funds were spent, and the number of people served. Do you guys remember signing a letter of agreement, the county mayors, with the Opioid Abatement Council? You do? Okay. And this is in that letter of agreement. So if forget this over time, and they should be communicating with you pretty consistently, but it is in that letter of agreement. So twice a year, you'll report that back. If you haven't spent any money, you simply tell them you haven't spent any money. It's not an emergency to spend this money, okay? Take your time. You have 2 years to allocate it, 4 years to spend it, before the Opioid Abatement Council is going to say, hey, why aren't you spending this money? But we know, especially in some of the smaller counties, you're getting small amounts of money. If you want to save it up for a couple of years, use it as a cost match for a larger grant, whatever you want to use it for, it's not an emergency to spend it. Okay, so take your time, plan well. If you don't have anything to report, you report back that you haven't spent any money. Okay, these are your approved remediation uses. The Abatement Council funds that are coming through Edison have to be spent on these 9 core strategies. There is a very long document that is a comprehensive list of approved programs. It's 16 pages long. David, will you send this presentation out to them? Okay, so the link at the bottom goes to the full list. Again, it's 16 pages. They did entertain the idea of letting people come to them with alternative ideas for spending the money. They decided they're not going to do that. You have 16 pages of programs that are approved. They decided that if it's not on that list, then probably shouldn't be doing it. If you have any questions about the program and if it's appropriate use of the funds, please ask. Happy to provide any guidance on that. But if they are spent on non-approved purposes, you are going to probably have to pay that money back. It will be audited by the state comptroller's office. So you're going to report to the Opioid Abatement Council twice a year what you spent it on, and the comptroller's office is going to audit annually where it went and make sure that it was on approved remediation purposes. So you have to be careful with this bucket of money. We are very happy to review any plans that you make and ideas that you have and make sure that those are in line with the rules. Okay, second wave, everybody, I do believe all 95 counties have signed on to the second wave settlements as well as some subdivisions. We are moving forward with this. The AG's office did tell me the other day, everything's in line, everything's been done. Payments for this second wave, this $490 million, should start coming in late summer, early fall. So again, there's going to be two different buckets of money with this, the subdivision fund, and then the opioid abatement fund as well. Look at the years on this. So each of these, the first one we had 10 years and 18 years. This one we have a 7-year, a 13-year, a 10-year, a 15-year, and a 1 year. Okay, so if that Walmart pays out all in 1 year, you'll get a very big payment that first year, and then it will decrease thereafter. Again, make it very hard to plan. If you want us to calculate out all of the payments, again, they're going to change over time based on county allocation, and this is assuming everybody makes their payments on time. If you would like us to create a timeline, years 1 through 18, and give you an idea of all of these monies added together, what you should be getting for each bucket of money annually, we are happy to do that. Just let us know. Okay, a lot of math here. There was legislation passed to amend the previous bill that will allow these funds and any other funds that come into the state to be allocated exactly how the original settlements were, with those 3 buckets of money, the 15 to the state, 15 subdivision, 70% to the abatement council. So from now on, any settlement agreements that you sign, that's how they're going to be coming into the state and distributed to you. Okay, so the community grants, a lot of this money is being held back for community grants. A very good portion of it. I think there's like $92 million in that account right now. It's a lot of money. Anybody in Tennessee, any Tennessee organization is eligible to apply for these funds. They will be competitive grants. They will accept them quarterly, so every 4 months. They will do another grant cycle. They'll get the grant applications, they'll review them, they have specific criteria that they're going to score them on, and then they'll distribute them at the end of that quarter. Counties are eligible to apply for these grant dollars. You will not be given top priority since counties are already receiving 2 different buckets of money. If you have a nonprofit in your county that you can now send in the application, it'll be a little higher up on the ladder than you are. But you absolutely can apply for these funds. We are happy to write this application and submit it on your behalf. We won't have our name on it or anything, but we're happy to write that for you. Yes, Joe?
Does the county have to be the entity that nonprofit applies for the rest of the?
No. No, nonprofit can apply directly through their nonprofit organization. Absolutely not. If they apply not through the county, they actually have higher priority for getting funded. So if possible for you to partner with them, we encourage you to do that. Yes?
Does it have to be an official 501c3 organization?
It does not, no. Any business, any organization, 501c3, it can be private, it can be public, it can be the university, it can be the county. Any Tennessee entity is eligible to apply for these funds. And again, we're very happy. The application process is very easy. I mean, the people on this council have full-time jobs. They are not federal grant reviewers. These are not your typical 85-page, PJA grants that we're talking about. This is a 2,000 max word grant application. So we're very happy to write this for you. Yes?
2 rumors I'm hearing. One is that that applications will be favored if they are like big conglomerate groups of people and organizations and one community working together and asking for huge amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one I'm hearing is that that's the strategy that should be used because out-of-state groups that provide services are going to have the capacity to put in those kind of applications that maybe small community groups don't have an edge on. So I just wondered what the Opioid Council would be thinking about that.
Yeah, so they actually have a plan for that, right? They're going to compare smaller applications and smaller applications and larger applications to larger applications. They have a below 1 million and above 1 million are kind of separating them out. No. So regional approaches, of course, the more people served per dollar is better, right? But we also know that some of the strategies, like treatment, is extremely expensive. We have to have treatment. So if you were putting in an application for a treatment facility in your county, you might not be serving a lot of people, but the cost is going to be high, and they know that. So no, they're not giving any priority to big corporations. A couple I've talked to have actually said we don't want the big entities like the university to come in, scoop up all of this money, and the local people, especially ones that have been hit really hard, not be able to access those funds. So we do not anticipate that happening at all. It should be a very fair process. Okay, and if you get these grant funds, you will have to report back more than just those 4 things for getting the money. Okay, so if you get grant funds and you put a program in place, there will be annual metrics that you have to report back to the abatement council in order to keep receiving funds, which makes sense. If you're doing something and it's not working, don't need to keep spending money on it. If you're doing something that is working very well, we need to know that because that can be replicated in other areas. Okay, so there has to be reporting back on that. And we're happy if you apply for a grant and you get funds, we're happy to help you line up the program evaluation, the metrics that you need to report. Happy to help you guys do any of that. Okay, anybody get any letters from Endo recently? I heard there's been some confusion about that. Okay, apparently Endo is causing the confusion. You don't need to do anything with Endo right now. Okay, the AG's office is involved with this local settlement. They are going bankrupt. We will likely be having some money come into the state. But what they're trying to do is just do it all as a state, just like we did with some of these others. If that doesn't happen, so they were waiting, last I talked to the AG's office, I anticipated it, as of May 15th, they did not have the bar date from Endo. So they have to get the bar date within 30 days, then they will kind of move forward with that. If that part doesn't work out and the AG's office isn't, I don't want to call it successful, but if they don't end up doing, a state agreement, then the counties themselves will have to provide the proof of claims directly to Endo. And that should not happen before September 15th, if it happens at all. Okay, so for right now, if you get anything from Endo, don't do anything with it. Okay, just completely ignore it for now. And the AG's office will send out information as they have updates directly to you, because they do know people are hearing from them and it's causing a lot of confusion. So don't do anything right now. Okay, this is what NACO and myself and the national opioid groups recommend that you do to figure out how to spend this money. Are you guys getting a lot of calls from local entities asking you for this money and asking where it's going and asking if they can have it? Is that Mayor Fox that's not here? How are you? Good to see you. What we don't want is for it to be a burden on you, right? So the county is the fiscal agent, so it makes sense that it's going through the county. Of course, the county commission has to be involved as well. But somebody has to decide where this money is going to go. And doesn't necessarily have to be the county mayor or the county commission. So what we recommend is you putting together a task force. And maybe you do 4-year terms, 3-year terms, whatever works for you. If it gets too big, it's going to get complicated and you're going to have a hard time getting anything done. 5 to 7 people seems to be a pretty good number, an odd number, so that you can't have an even vote, but made up of people in the community with different areas of expertise, okay? And these are just some thoughts. So local elected officials, it would be great if you could get a county commissioner on the task force. Okay, maybe somebody that works with the budget or health. David had a couple ideas. No, it was budget and health would be good ones. But having somebody from the county commission, because they're going to be involved, and having them understand the needs of the community as well as how all of this is working would be very beneficial. So if you put a county commissioner on there, that would be great. Representatives from diverse populations. So you want to represent age, race, gender, all of that. And you definitely want somebody on there that represents youth. Whether it be somebody from a school, somebody from your youth prevention coalition, but you need to have somebody in the room that can speak for children because they will not be there to be able to speak for themselves. Service providers, if you have a treatment provider, a social worker, somebody that provides direct care to people with opioid use disorder would be great. Their area of expertise is much needed. County agency leaders, law enforcement, EMS, your coalition director, people with lived experience. They need to be at the table. It doesn't have to be someone who's actively using drugs. It can be somebody in recovery. You guys have a peer navigator or a certified peer recovery specialist. That would be a fantastic person. They're in recovery. They've been through the addiction, the treatment, the recovery part of it. But you need to have somebody at the table who can speak for the people that you're trying to serve with these dollars. Okay, so, and it can even be somebody that has a family member that they lost or a child that struggles with addiction. But somebody that has lived experience of some sort really needs to be involved. And then if you have a university in your county, get somebody from the university on there. Okay, and what they're going to be valuable for is data analysis, data collection, program evaluation, measuring metrics and outcomes, that part of it. Okay, you have to know what you're doing. Is it being impactful? Do we want to keep moving forward? Do we need to make revisions, modifications, or completely change what we're doing? And they can help with that. It might be a statistician, it might be somebody from the College of Social Work that has, experience with program evaluation. But if you have a university, I recommend trying to find somebody from that university. And anybody else. Health council. You guys all have health councils now, right? Get somebody from that health council on there. And why, somewhere here, I think I was going to talk about health councils, but I think we'll talk about that right now. The health council that's being funded through the Tennessee Department of Health is in a position right now to be extremely beneficial to you. So they're doing an assessment, a health assessment of the county. Who's done with their health assessments? You guys know? Yeah. So I think 60 counties, they told me, have finished. And part of that assessment is to identify 3 major areas to address. And out of the 60 that have finished, 40 of them have addressed substance use as one of the top 3. That gives you guys some data to work with that you're not going to have to go out and get again. Okay, they're already collecting information. If you can get somebody from that health council on this task force, it's going to be very beneficial. Okay, once you get a task force in place, these are the guiding principles. This is what NACA was recommending that county officials follow. It's the Johns Hopkins guiding principles. Number 1, of course, save lives. That needs to be at the very foundation of everything you do. People are dying. Fentanyl overdose is the number 1 cause of death in America for people ages 18 to 45. Okay, number 1. We have to save lives. This is a multi-generational issue, and it affects the children of the people that we lose. We have to work to save lives, number 1. Evidence to guide spending. We want to do programs, and there is room for innovation, right? Just because it isn't something we aren't doing now doesn't mean that it isn't something that can be very useful, impactful, and beneficial. But we want to do things that there is some evidence to support. Okay? It doesn't have to be stamped evidence-based by a university, but it needs to be a promising practice and have some kind of support for success. So if another county has done it, if you're doing it in your county, you're having pretty good success, put some more money into it, evaluate it. If it's working, keep doing it. Okay, but make sure if you're doing something that's not working, you're not continuing to put money into it. Youth prevention. Again, this is a multi-generational issue. We know who's at risk. I recommend that if for youth prevention, targeting the at-risk population. So it's children of people who use drugs, children of people that are incarcerated, children of people who have lost a parent to overdose, children in the foster care system for drug use. We know who they are, so if you can find a way to identify them and provide resources for them, you're going to kind of stop that multi-generational issue that we're having with this. Racial equity, we have to serve all different races and populations. Okay, make sure they're all on the task force. You have to represent everybody in your community. People of color, we're starting to see the two groups of people we're starting to see a sharp increase in overdose deaths, people of color and adolescents. Okay, so make sure you're targeting those populations. Develop a fair and transparent process. Can't stress this enough. There's a lot of public eyes on this money, locally, the state level, and at the national level. You have to be transparent about where this money is going. And you need to seek community input. And that's where that health council, and we're going to talk about doing an assessment in a minute, but they're already gathering community input. So as Mayor Potts did this just a couple weeks ago, they're doing a health assessment. They send out a survey. He called and he's like, hey, can we add 5 questions about drug use and opioid dollars? Put it right into that survey, and now he's going to get that community input. It's not difficult to do if you already have something in place, and that health council and that health assessment that they're doing is a really great place to just add this in. But seek community input and then report back where everything's going. So a needs assessment, this is very recommended. Okay, NACO has a wonderful guide, and I didn't put a lot of the details about it in here because you guys aren't the ones that will be doing a needs assessment. It will be somebody in your community, hopefully a task force that you assemble, or the health council can do this as well. They are typically done through state health departments, county health departments. But basically, it's a systematic process for obtaining information and deciding where the needs and where the gaps are. You can't spend money until you know where it needs to go. So what do you have in your community? Are there opportunities to fill gaps with small amounts of money? Where are you going to make the biggest impact? It is recommended by SAMHSA. SAMHSA is the National Organization Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They recommend doing one every 3 years. That is also where your health council will be conducting health assessments every 3 years, funded through the Department of Health. So, lines up very nicely. Okay, a couple things I want to talk about. Using funds to leverage funds. Okay, some of these counties in our state are small, the allocations are small, you're not getting a lot of money. So how do you take $30,000 and make it into a sustainable long-term program? Number one recommendation is to use it to leverage additional funds. Use it as a cost match for an NRC grant. You can use it as a cost match for a drug-free communities grant. You can use it to fill in gaps of other money. If you do a needs assessment and you identify the criminal justice system as a place that you need to start programming, we're happy to help you write a Bureau of Justice Assistance grant. You know, those are typically $600,000 to $1 million. Get one of those, and then use your opioid money to fill in the gaps that you can't use that money for. Okay, maybe it covers treatment and your drug court, but it doesn't cover transportation. You can use your funds to cover the transportation part. Okay, so use it to get additional funds. Again, we will help you do that if you want to go that route. Another opportunity, the Department of Health, I know I keep saying it's Health Council, but it lines up so well. The strategies, so the 3 areas that are identified as a need in your community from that Health Council assessment, if you develop an intervention plan for one of those 3 categories and write a proposal for the Department of Health, they are giving out grants to address those 3 issues. If one of those 3 issues is substance use, you can apply for a grant to implement a program for substance use. The largest grant they've given out so far is $500,000, so not a small grant. We'll help you write that too if you need If you can collaborate with other counties, by all means do it, okay? I do not recommend a whole economic district trying to work together. We had some conversations about that last year. It's too many people. A judicial district of a couple counties might be good, neighboring counties. Share people. You know, if you want to start a harm reduction program or naloxone distribution, if you're a small county, you might need an entire program to yourself. Share with a neighbor, you guys can go in together. Okay, if you border a large community and they have a lot of resources in place, can you use part of your funds to purchase their resources? So they're going to provide the resources in your county, but you don't have to hire everybody and start that whole program yourself, if that makes sense. So collaborate, but small collaborations. I would say 2 counties, 4 counties at the most. Evaluate programs. Again, we touched on this. You have to evaluate programs. If they are working, you might need to invest more money in them. You might need to replicate them. We want to know if they're working because we want to replicate them in other counties. If they aren't working, then we have to stop putting money there. Okay? Why isn't it working? We just need to revise something. We need to do a small modification. But we have to track that, and we have to make sure that these funds are being well spent. Oh, we are in the process right now of hiring 3 consultants, substance use consultants. So we work just like your other CCAS consultants. We'll have one in each grant division. They are there they start in July. They will be there to help you develop opioid settlement plans. They will help you start programs, evaluate programs, write grants, whatever you need them to do. They will be there to serve you just like your other CCAS consultants. They won't be through CCAS, they will be through SMART, again, which is another IPS new entity, but they will work in the same capacity. So if you need any kind of guidance or assistance, we're happy to work with you, we're happy to work with your nonprofits, your health council, whatever you guys need, we're here to serve you. And then we have some time, there's time, our email, website. What questions do you guys have? What do you want to talk about? What do you need to know?
I see a lot of folks taking pictures of the slides. We'll have this posted together with our conference materials on the website shortly after the conference. Wes has also been recording this session, so if people from your counties or that analysts so will get here to see this, we'll get the video posted up here as well. But any questions? I'm sure there are some out there.
When you talk about ranking, the school systems, how do they rank as far as government, the county government, are they equal to the side, or have they only set up programs in school?
Say that again.
The school systems, would they be counted as county government as far as ranking?
No, I don't think they would be, no. That's a great question. I would say not, but the abatement council will decide that, but I would say no, they're not.
So, grants that are coming in over the next year or so, or applications for the state funds, could propose ongoing projects and then with the hope or expectation that their outcomes would warrant funding year after year after year. That's sort of what I'm hearing. And then that's a 2-part question, so is that correct? And then also, it seems like after time, those funds will be committed to the projects that got in at the beginning, right? And then to the extent that they're successful, they keep getting funded. If someone's not successful or drops out, there would be available funding for new applications. Is that how you're imagining this goes?
So they're actually doing 3-year funding cycles. So if you apply for a grant from the state, it will be limited to 3 years. So you can apply for 1, 2, or 3 years anywhere in there. After the 3-year period, so part of the criteria that they're going to score that application on is sustainability. So that is always part of the grant application. And that is always the most difficult part, right? How do you sustain a program that's successful after your funding stream is gone. Okay, there's a problem out there. So sustainability is one of the criteria, but you can reapply for additional funding, and that will depend on, again, your evaluation, your metrics, your outcomes. Is it successful? Can you expand it? Is the county putting money into it? So one of the hopes is you use these funds, you start a program, it saves the county money in the long run, right? So if you start a jail program, you would expect to start seeing savings there in the criminal justice budget. Same with law enforcement, EMS, things like that. So the hope is you start a program, it saves the county money, maybe the county will start investing some into that program. One way you can look at sustainability. Another part is if you're starting a program that's kind of new, innovative, not evidence-based yet, but supported with promising practice, you could use these abatement funds almost to pilot a program, report your metrics and outcomes. If it's successful, go back, ask for funds to expand the program. So nothing to say you can't reapply, but at the end of that 3-year period, that's when you be successful, you expect to get more funds. So it's not ongoing for the 18 years.
Gotcha. That answers my question.
I believe you said any entity in the state of Tennessee could apply. So if there are entities out there that are applying and the county doesn't know that they applied, is there a way to notify the county that they're with a program?
Not that they've applied, I don't believe. Now, if they're awarded funds, that will become public information, yes. But if they've applied, you won't know that until they're awarded funds. And they have to serve Tennessee, so that's another thing. They have to be in Tennessee and they have to serve Tennessee.
We've had several meetings that we've been working with Prevention Coalition and all that. We're wanting to come up with the funds and maybe start like a drug interdiction task force team on the sheriff's department. And that is allowed, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And then say if we had $100,000 a year, and employ 2 officers or whatever, say at the end of the year, I only use $80,000 of that. From my understanding, that money, you don't lose it, it doesn't go back in the general fund, it just rolls over the next year. The funds just sit there, or you get your second batch of money and it just adds to that extra $20,000 you didn't use the year before.
That's a great question, and I don't think they've gotten that far. So there's a couple things that I asked the abatement council that they haven't provided answers for yet, okay? One of them is, can you use funds, whether it be the county allocation or the grant funds, for admin fees? Okay, we don't have an answer to that yet. Another question that I asked that we haven't had answered is this going to be a reimbursement model, or is this going to be a pay in advance model? So some grants will give you, 6 months worth of funds up front, a year worth of funds up front. I have a HRSA grant, they give you 3 years, $1 million up front, have it all, and then spend it along the way. Others, like ARC, is a reimbursement model, like state grants right now have one that's a reimbursement model. We incur the cost, and then we send them an invoice, and they pay us back. So that model is hard sometimes for small nonprofits and counties as well, because you have to pay that up front. Don't have an answer on that. So as far as rollover, that's unknown as well. Those little cards, and I'm hoping they're supposed to have a meeting this week that they rescheduled for next month. They do have an emergency meeting today, but I think it's about data. So those little things, we probably won't know until they release the application. And hopefully, they're expecting to take applications this fall. Are you talking about a grant, or are you talking about your accounting money?
It would be good to opiate money, like we just put a new line item on the sheriff's department budget, say opiate abatement.
Gosh, I'm not talking about a grant, I see.
$100,000 in there, just be left up to the finance director to say, okay, next year,
Yes,
we're gonna give them another 100,000, they use 20,000, and they want to start out this coming budget year with 120,000, and we just continue like that. In those years that we did not get as much money, they might only
Yes.
put 80 in there, and then, that's the way I was understanding,
Yes,
or
you are
wanted to
correct.
learn. And I said, we're wanting to start that, we don't have a drug task force in our county, we used 2 years ago, and then we can at least try to get a hold of the problem in the beginning before the fentanyl and all the drugs get out with enforcement actions, and it'll be a proven program.
absolutely, yeah, I'm sorry, I thought we were still on grant dollars. Yes, you can absolutely do that. And when this money is coming in, I know we've had some conversations with the CTAS consultants, and I've had some conversations specifically with some county finance directors. When these funds start coming in, we do recommend keeping the abatement fund money as a separate line item. You're gonna have to report exactly how much of that has been spent and when. And so if you put that in with any other money, it's gonna be hard to track and follow. So we do recommend a separate line item. As long as it's getting spent within that 2 and 4 year period, but if you're spending it consistently, you shouldn't have any issues there. So yes, that's absolutely very appropriate. Yes.
Okay, take it back to grants.
Mm-hmm.
With the caveat, 2 counties, maybe 4 counties, pulling resources together, right? Are there any nationally recognized successful programs offering treatment for this population?
Are there any treatment programs?
Correct. That you could show as an example is working in other places.
Yes.
Would you be willing to share that information with the counties?
Yes. We could pull together, and when we get our consultants on board, that's one thing that we're gonna have them develop. I want them to do 2 things. One, for the counties that they're assigned to, I want them to identify what programs they currently have. So that when they're working with you, they can say, this is what you have, this is what you don't. And then for treatment, recovery, faith-based recovery, school programs, what are the evidence-based programs? And almost have like a catalog of, here, this is what a successful jail program looks like, this is what a successful treatment program. So yes, we hope to have, it'll take a little while, but if there's something specific you want, let us know. But we hope to have a database of examples of successful programs that you can review.
Isn't there also NACO's opioid solution center? I
They
think it's
do.
called, they got a lot of examples of communities in other parts of the country that do that.
They do. NACO has some really great resources, especially their guide for conducting a needs assessment. I mean, you can give that directly to your health and council and have them incorporate that into what they're already doing. Or you can give it to a task force if you assemble one. I mean, step by step, this is what you need to do, and they're great. And they do have examples of, what other counties across the nation have, who they put on their task force, how they did their needs assessment, what they identified as their problem areas, how they did a needs and gaps assessment, and then implement the program. So it's called NACO Opioid Solutions, I think, is that what the website is stated? It's really great. I recommend you go there for information specific to county officials.
So I think I heard you say a minute ago that on the grants, we could apply for administrative support to help support the activities within the grant if you're doing an innovative program that doesn't exist, particularly if you're bringing in researchers for evidence-based and doing needs assessments. That would help support that early on the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. We're right at about time. Any last questions?
I just indicate that Mayor Potts is on NACO's opioid
He
task
is.
force, so we have someone
He is.
right here that we can help get information from.
That is very true. And I don't know if he's sharing any information or what he's learned. You want to share anything that you've learned, Mayor Potts? He is on the National Rural County Opioid Task Force.
Yeah,
Through NACO.
traveling around to different areas of the country to see what works and what doesn't work. And we were recently In addition to that, there's larger cities, the group I'm on, it's either major cities, smaller counties, smaller counties in Kentucky that would be higher. One of the things I saw, probably not something I can do where we're at, but larger areas are putting vending machines out. And at no charge, you can go get Narcan out of it, you can get test strips for fentanyl, you can get syringes and other things like that. And the cities that are doing that, they're putting it in areas that are not labeled you as like a user type person going there. But I know like the county executive in Milwaukee says it's all they can do to keep these machines stocked. So perhaps we can find other ways to get that out to them.
Yeah, I tried to pilot a Narcan vending machine, and I tried to get the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services to provide naloxone, and that just wasn't feasible for them. It's just very costly. If you're in a smaller community and you might not go through as quickly, it might work really well. Some of the local communities are doing it nationwide. But yeah, verify it's along the way. If you come across anything that might be helpful, if you want to send it our way, and we can share it throughout as well.
You mentioned EMS services earlier, and we mentioned it yesterday in legislation that EMS hasn't been supported. We really have been funded through any kind of after pre-COVID help, and now it's hitting our counties. EMS is heavily hitting us in a lot of areas. Can you tell us how we might be able to use some of this money to relieve some of the pressure and help maybe EMS treat?
Sure. So sharing part of the burden with other first responders. You can use the funds to hire additional people to buy additional supplies to purchase Narcan for EMS. One thing that we hear a lot with EMS is compassion fatigue. They can ensure that the mental health of EMS providers is intact, providing direct support to them. The best way to relieve stress on EMS is to decrease your overdose rates. So it's going to be a workaround, right? So not a whole lot you can do directly to EMS other than giving them more funding and support for themselves, or hire more people to decrease the workload, but really it's decreasing the fatal and non-fatal overdoses in the community that's going to relieve the stress of EMS. So targeting programs to do that. And we can talk more if you want. I think we're out of time.
Yeah, please do, Jennifer.